She wore blue velvet. Bluer than velvet was the night. Softer than satin was the light from the stars. So the first David Lynch movie, due to subscriber votes, was Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet is often considered to be among one of Lynch's best works, or at least one of his most significant or popular ones, at least in retrospect. If the movie's title doesn't stick with you, it probably will after you watch it, since the line comes up several times, in song form. I'll admit that Blue Velvet is one that I struggle to find much initial inspiration to talk about. This isn't necessarily due to it being a badly done movie or anything, it's just sort of weird. Not just in a Lynchian way, but in terms of my somewhat conflicted feelings about it. I guess this is sort of seen as a movie where Lynch really came into his own as a filmmaker, following one more straightforward historical drama and one epic sci-fi disaster. Both films were less commercial and less personal, with a lack of personal control, although I think both Elephant Man and Dune are both very evident of his style and prove he's a versatile and capable filmmaker. And yet, while watching Blue Velvet again, it made me think of how I've never really seen that as being true. It may be that the film is the most accessible to general audiences while still sticking with some of his more popular tropes, genre trappings, and general plot elements, which I'm tempted to say are gritty, surreal crime thrillers that deal with issues of identity and duality. Then again, that only really covers a small amount of his work. So why then does Blue Velvet stick out so much in the general lexicon that I gleaned upon some very brief research? I think it's because Blue Velvet seems to be enigmatic and almost colossal in its legacy. For me though, Eraserhead always seemed like the raw, unfiltered Lynch, and yet, despite being very, very abstract, provides some of his best work. It's often regarded as a surreal masterpiece, and I agree, where it doesn't have much of a conventional plot, but uses everything else to tell a story through a truly emotional and visceral experience. Lynch was primarily a painter, and was inspired to make movies in much the same vein. Paintings, even more abstract ones, can tell a story of a sort, at least a story of emotional connection. There is of course that unseen effort that the artist makes in trying to capture an idea, a moment, or a feeling, and then the audience's interpretation. They may be both completely unconnected, but can come together to create something that is a truly unique experience for the person viewing it. Now, you could say this of all art really, but David Lynch pretty much drops all pretenses. He's all about tapping into something dreamlike and bringing that experience to the screen. Dreams don't always make sense. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't, but they impact us strongly in an emotional way, if we remember them. David Lynch does that consistently well. Anyway, I should save Eraserhead for another time. You're here for Blue Velvet. I know it sounds like I'm harping on it, but perhaps I'm avoiding to talk about it because, well, Blue Velvet never has been, and still isn't, one of my favorite Lynch films. I feel like I'm being forced to reevaluate myself as a fan, as Lynch is someone that I've admired greatly and in some ways wish to emulate as a filmmaker, and yet I don't love one of his most beloved movies? Well, not for the reasons that people disliked it back in the day. I think watching Twin Peaks again made me realize how this is both kind of an R-rated Peaks, but in many ways it's undercooked proto-Peaks. I promise though, I do like it. To make sure this video doesn't last too much longer, here are a few things that stood out on this watch. Due to Dino De Laurentiis connections, say that 3 times fast, Blue Velvet seems to be a bit of a reunion for the Dune cast. I feel like some people have kind of discussed that Blue Velvet could be a prequel to Twin Peaks in a way, and it is sort of unofficially, I feel like. But maybe there is a Dune, Blue Velvet, David Lynch connected universe, perhaps. Maybe I'll make that video eventually. But yeah, a bunch of people show up. There's Paul, of course, and Piter, and Dr. Yui, and Nefud. I really liked that stairway. Acting as a transition point for Jeffrey to enter into a darker place is really a great example of an excellent use of ambience. He really likes using that stairway a lot. At its basics, like several of his other films, it really boils down to a basic battle between good and evil, both between external forces as well as those within the individual. Because we aren't given many details, we are often left to wonder why Jeffrey feels drawn to this particular situation. Sure, young people can be curious and really like to push the limits of safety, but it really makes you wonder what's up with him. We never really know for sure, and we are left to interpret it ourselves, as he has less internal monologues than our typical noir anti-hero. If he was a private eye, his interest in the case would make a bit more sense. Then again, Dune had lots of internal monologues. Wait, does that mean Dune was secretly a space noir the whole time?